Send out. And I think I'm live, so thank you, dear. Welcome to the latest edition of Bonnet Chronicles. It is March the 20, no, March 19th. Sorry, I'm a bit ahead of schedule. It's been a crazy week. Oh, really? Says streaming. Yeah, Capricorn just said I'm live. Hey, Capricorn. No, it's okay. Good looking out, though. Now, I'm gonna be honest. Today is going to be a very heavy topic. If you haven't been following the news today, well, the last few days, you probably will feel sidelined by this, but it's a topic that I feel like we need to address. Um, it's been ongoing since the inception of this country. And as much as I wanted to make things light, talk about the stimulus and upgrades, which I'll probably add towards the end because I have some announcements to make about the cast and the witch's path. Today has been a long time coming because 4 years ago, we put a bigot into power as our leader. Hey, Silent, how are you doing tonight? And as much as he did harm to naturalized American citizens, born American citizens, and people all over the globe, this pandemic showed not only Trump's incompetence as a president, but as a human being. Things like calling it the China virus, the rise of anti-Asian sentiment, which is not new in our country. Now, I have gone on record on social media and beyond, showing pictures of my family because my family is multi-ethnic. We have people who've married in, people who were born in the Philippines, who were here since before World War II. And when World War II happened, had to deal with the racism in California for being Asian and people just assuming that they were Japanese because to a racist, an Asian looking person could be from wherever their stupid minds are. It's nothing for my cousins to have stories of people slanting their eyes at them without understanding the intricacies of racism, even amongst Asian races. My relatives face prejudice for being brown skinned Asians as it is from the Philippines. There are countries like Japan and even Korea who look down upon Filipinos in the hierarchy of race. And it was frustrating for my aunties and my uncles to have to put up with that hate and then the hate of other white Americans who just assumed that their eye shape made them Japanese or Chinese. And Chinese Americans had to go through a whole lot of racism, including harsh labor conditions, media slander. There's a reason why Dr. Seuss had 6 books banned, and it wasn't Green Eggs and Ham or any of his popular books. It was books that had openly anti-Asian racism. And the problem I see with a lot of Americans is some of y'all have acceptable levels of bigotry. And because you have these acceptable levels of bigotry, you think, well, Asians have it better than most minorities, so it doesn't matter if people make fun of them. It doesn't matter if people are sitting there punching 80-year-old grandmas in San Francisco, pushing them down in New York, beating up old grandpas, and just being verbally and physically abusive to elders, which I don't care what culture you're from. You should respect your elders. But you see, there's a microcosm of radicalization in this country that too many of us did not take seriously until it was too late. That radicalization got us Trump. That radicalization continues to have people like Josh Hawley and Marjorie Taylor Greene acting like there should be no consequences for their actions. It's why Mitch McConnell was considered a Machiavellian villain when all he was lucky enough to find a bunch of dumbass senators who he could dupe into doing his bidding. We have allowed a certain sect of Christians, and I'm not going to lump every single Christian into it, but there is a certain sect of Christianity in this country that has allowed politics from the pulpit, which shouldn't be, that has allowed sexism, misogyny, homophobia, racism to be taught as if religion is a country club that can exclude others from God and make others seem better. And it bothers me because these people swear that they are about the Bible, yet they use the Bible to exclude fellow human beings, to label them, to cast them out of a heaven that I'm not sure those people are even getting into, because one of the things your good book says is not to be judging people, but that's all they seem to do. Yet on the flip side, they will uplift somebody who has committed murder, who has committed adultery, who has committed all sorts of their seven deadly sins. And this attack in Atlanta is a prime example of how much radicalization has been underplayed in our country. Because this young man from Georgia, and I refuse to air his name out any more than the media has, decided to attack spa. I'm not going to call it a massage parlor. I grew up in New York City. I know the difference between a massage parlor and a spa. And even if it was one of those massage parlors where you can go and get that hey now, nobody deserves to lose their lives to an angry, sexually frustrated incel who decides these people are beneath me anyway. And he, because of the radicalization in this country, was able to dehumanize people enough to where he could take his rage out. And I need people to understand that it's not just versus POC. I guarantee you, if that young man had actually had a relationship, his spouse or his partner would have been abused, because abuse runs rampant within this community. Misogyny especially runs rampant within this community. They downplay violence against women because they believe that in their homes that a woman should be controlled in such way. And it's because of this constant dehumanization of their fellow human beings that they become desensitized. Then you add the coddling of them, where they're not responsible for their actions. They're just kids. This motherfucker was 21 years old. There was nothing kid about him. My 16-year-old son, and I say teen because he is a minor, would be looked at as an adult male in the eyes of this society. Yet this young man who decided to get a gun and end 8 lives of being called a kid who had a bad day. Everybody's had a bad day. Everybody's had a day where they felt like they were at the end of their ropes, stressed out, whether it's from work, whether it's from personal things, whether it's from feeling lonely. But it takes a special kind of entitlement to take that rage and channel it into, I am going to willingly take a life. And he is not the first. He's not even the first in the last few weeks of people who have taken white rage, because I'm making it clear this is white rage, and channeling it into violence because they didn't get something they wanted. We've seen it at our Capitol in January. And the shame of this is you don't want a whole demographic to feel targeted when you talk about this, but they don't pay us that same respect. I have to hear all the time when another one of my people become a hashtag about how you need to comply, or maybe if you people didn't get in trouble with the law all the time, and all sorts of ridiculous generalizations that I learned not to take personally. I learned early on in my life, if it doesn't apply, let it fly, because people are going to make judgments about my skin tone no matter what. But sometimes you just want to talk about how insidious it is to watch our media make excuses for a man who took 8 lives. Just like they made excuses for Dylan Roof. That young man walked into a church in South Carolina, prayed with the people, said he almost had a change of heart because of the kindness they showed him, and still murdered 9 people, got taken in alive by the cops, and treated to fast food. Went on record saying that the reason he did it was to start a race war. And this is because he has men like Rush Limbaugh, who I will never say rest in peace, good riddance. He has men like Joe Rogan and Alex Jones and Fox News constantly filling their heads with the fact that this country's changing and you're not going to get a piece of yours, even if you really ain't even working for a piece of yours, telling you that women should be your property, and if you don't, you can't get them by regular methods, you can grab them by the pussy. They uplift this toxic mentality that somehow a lack of skin pigment makes you better than every other human being in this country, and that they should follow everything you say because you are the center of the universe. When basically the only thing you are is the default setting in society, the easy button mode of life, because you somehow fucked that up. And because you can't help the fact that you're fucking mediocre and that you got pube hairs for your chin beard, you decide you're going to take a gun and end people's lives. Make that make sense. How does it make sense that because this man decided that the easiest life mode setting wasn't enough for him to apply himself towards something good, supposedly had a sexual addiction, that his anger at not being able to get some strange was enough to take 8 lives? There are so many Americans in this country who have faced hate, bullying, abuse for years. We have had bad days for decades. We have never decided we are going to get a gun and end a whole bunch of people's lives. I don't understand how that excuse can be made, but the fucker who made the biggest excuse is some cue ball looking motherfucker in Georgia who really shouldn't be sheriff, because he was passing out shirts that were anti-Asian as well. And that's why I said there's a prevalence online and off with people allowing attacks or jokes or racist insults against POC, black and non-black, because you have acceptable forms of bigotry, and that is not okay anymore. We have seen what the downplaying of dehumanization brings us. When you allow people to dehumanize people, even if it's supposedly ha-ha funny, to an idiot like Mr. Chin Hair, as I want to call him, he doesn't view them as worthy human beings. He doesn't view their lives as having meaning. And when you desensitize angry men like this to the fact that their fellow human beings aren't worthy, they don't care about taking lives. He could have took his own life. It would have been sad for his family. It would have been tragic. But if you're that frustrated with where life's bringing you, that's the mindset that I would rather a person have than to go and snuff out 8 innocent lives that did nothing to him. 21 years old. He had the whole world at his feet. And he decided instead that he was going to take a life because he was taught from the get not to respect life. And the bad thing is people are going to have to look at where he was radicalized. You know, it's funny. Having Muslims in my family especially, how easily, if there had been somebody Muslim, they would have been ready for war. They would have attacked mosques. They would have been like, see, there's a radicalized group going on in America, and they're all over the place. We got countries already trying to ban people from congregating together. Denmark is trying to pass a law saying that if you come from certain countries, we don't want you grouping together in enclaves or ghettos. There's always been a prevalent mentality that certain culture is bad while others are golden. And these people, they preach from the pulpit especially that our way is the right way and everybody needs to fall in line, and if they don't fall in line, they're not worthy anyway. And when you got the church telling you that. Then you've got media types telling you that. You've got these angry male pundits on the radio telling you that you're special and that this country needs to give you what you want by force. They're going to take your guns, so you need to buy more guns. You need to have the craziest guns that you can take. And some of them are being military trained, like that idiot that they busted outside the VP's new home, armed to the teeth with an AR-15 and 30 rounds of untraceable ammo. And people keep acting like we don't have a problem. I don't get it. This is a really deep problem that if we keep ignoring, they're going to keep upping the ante. And I'm sorry, after January 6th, when I watch people taping themselves, putting it on TikTok, calling it a revolution as they stormed our Capitol, took things, smeared feces, murdered cops, and are acting like they can get away with it. One motherfucker in Texas talking about, I want to move my trial from D.C. to Texas. Like, where do you get off thinking you have the right to even request anything? You're a traitor to the freaking country. But there's a level of entitlement that these people hold that I will never understand. Obviously, because being black, you're not allowed or even afforded that kind of entitlement. But I can't imagine. Yes, and welcome to the chat, Bees Louise. And exactly, racism is their religion. Gaslighting is so freaking racist. And every last one of them is a traitor. It is crazy. Yes. And Axiom's still here, y'all. For real, I just feel like people are not taking it seriously still. And what we who do take it seriously have to keep pressing our media, especially, to stop kid loving these types. What really, truly bothers me, and look at just in a 10-year history, recent history of this country, deaths of Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Ayanna Stanley Jones. These were babies. These were actual children who were murdered by law enforcement, or in the case of Jordan Davis, whose mother is Lucy McBath, Georgia representative, who lost his life because a racist didn't like his music in his car. We are not afforded the same respect and rights as American citizens whose roots were forcefully planted here. I am American. I don't have roots anywhere else. I can trace my descendants back to the people who were brought here on ships and the other people who were freaking taken from their tribes and re-educated because being native was considered savage. I am American. And I shouldn't have to fight for my life just to exist. Yet these people can get a gun and just end the lives of people, be taken in. They deserve all the rights of a citizen, whereas a child playing in a park deserves bullets in their back. A child laying on the couch with her grandmother deserves her brains blown out. A child can't even walk in his own neighborhood in a hoodie without some wannabe vigilante murdering him. How is this right? And why do we keep allowing this to go on? I know the last 4 years especially has been hard. I get it. We literally were ass deep in fascism. There's no better way to put it. Luckily, it was like the Keystone Cops do fascism. We did not have a smart man. We did not have people clever enough to keep him going like Hitler had. But it was enough fascism for us to realize that if the GOP had been more clever, we would have been in trouble. And we had a deadly pandemic that has taken over 500,000 lives. So I get being exhausted. But in that realm, we've also had cops leaning on a man's neck as he begged for his mother with his last breath. We've had peaceful marches turned into riots by wannabe protesters who want to talk about defund the police when their white asses are gentrifying neighborhoods they shouldn't be in the first place. We have a big ass divide of 70 plus million Americans who were willing to once again vote for that incompetence because he told Americans that he would make America great again. And there are so many of us that are saying, when the fuck was that time? When you brought us over on chains? Or when you decided that the people who were here first deserved to be put on reservations and marched into death camps? Was it when you decided homosexuality was a crime and a mental illness and tear gas and murdered them? Was it every bit of the Civil War and Jim Crow that followed after that, where we had the audacity to serve this country in war, only to come back and be told you got to sit in the back of a bus? You couldn't be served at a counter? You could only go to coloreds only places? Redlined? Kept out of decent neighborhoods and schools until a little girl bravely had to fight for a right to sit in a classroom in Little Rock, Arkansas. Don't you tell me make America great again, because for who? Think about Japanese Americans who fought for this nation, who came here to make a life for their families, being put in internment camps by our president. He had legal rights to detain them for no other suspicion than them being Japanese. Imagine the horrors of that. And you're going to say, make America great again. And the 70 million people who he has had drink that Kool-Aid, and I don't say that lightly because I do know the history of Jim Jones, but the cult-swilling Quananon believers who allow this hate to fester in their heart and soul, enough for many of them to get on Lear jets and fly to D.C. and act like the Capitol deserved to be stormed. That is a problem that we cannot ignore no matter how tired we are, because they are becoming even more unstable, even more out of touch with reality, even more dehumanizing of their fellow human beings simply because they don't understand them. I don't understand every human being. I'm never going to be able to walk the same path as every other human being on this earth. But I know that if they are not directly hurting somebody and they are hurting me and mine, it is so much easier to mind your fucking business. Stay out of people's business. Don't worry about who they're loving, how they're living their life. If they are living a productive life and they happen to be transgender, what's it to you? Why is it so hard for people to understand that there are people born knowing their identity? And you might not understand what that's like because you might have been born a male that knew he was a male, or a female that knew he was a female, knew she was a female. You weren't born in a body that felt like a cage to you. And if you can't understand that, that's fine, but mind your fucking business and stop spreading turf shit. Have a little bit of compassion and empathy. And it bothers me, especially when marginalized groups do this. Because as much as I want to talk about white evangelicalism, it is a poison that has seeped into the black church as well. It is why black preachers will get in front of the pulpit and condemn homosexuality without realizing that it's none of your freaking business. And if you are from a religion that's supposed to be teaching compassion, love, not judging others, respect for your fellow man, because that is what Jesus stood for, yet in the same breath are condemning human beings, grown-ass human beings who ain't bringing their business before you, you're wrong. And you're never going to convince me anything past that, because we don't have time for this. I was told as a child, and maybe it's my naivety for the TV shows I was into, that we would be better. This was supposed to be the future that I remember as a little girl, of technology, of us working together, us finding ways to be one species, traveling to different star systems, learning, growing, and expanding. And this is something that I found out studying for my other show that I do on Saturdays, that there seems to be a constant disconnect when humans shut down proper education to times like this. Because when people aren't educated, when they don't have access to learning and ways to actually express themselves when they learn properly, they act out. It's like we are reliving the dark ages right now. And it doesn't make sense because we are in a digital age where learning is possible at a pace where everybody can learn. But we have factions of people who want to keep us arguing with each other, who want to keep us separated, who want to dehumanize people they think are beneath them, and who want to keep the general masses as stupid as possible. And it doesn't matter how easily we can access information on the phone if people are able to get on social media apps and spread lies. Because we are raising generations of people who believe that if something sounds good, it doesn't matter if it's verifiable. It makes me feel good to believe it, so it doesn't matter. And it's hard to fight against people like that. It's hard to even reason with them because they don't care about facts over their feelings. And it doesn't take much to mind your business. It makes life simpler. I know that there are people out there that feel like they have to insert themselves into things. I've watched it several times growing up. I've never personally understood it, but I get the need to give advice sometimes unsolicited, the need to interject when somebody's doing something wrong. I had to unlearn it on Twitter. When I first started on Twitter, especially when I got into political Twitter, I thought I had to jump into everything, and all it did was burn me out. Most of the time, unless it's something really dumb, which I'm going to bring up in just a little bit, I tend to just keep it moving. Because A, it's not worth the energy you need to expend on somebody who's already being hateful, already being obtuse. I watch it almost every day where people still arguing with Bernie Sanders supporters. And I'm telling you this, if you follow me, just block them. I know you think it's cathartic to argue with people who don't want to believe that a president shouldn't have absolute power, or that you can just make a country that's been capitalist, socialist, and everybody would go along with it. I am done reasoning with people who don't use reason. I am done arguing with people who are like talking to a brick wall. And I guarantee you, you will not miss arguing with people who already think you're dumb, you're wrong, you're a boomer, you're whatever stupid ass insult they want to come up with to justify the fact that their politician's never going to be president. It's as simple as that. But getting back to the radicalization of white rage, you see it in movies, you see it in television, you see it all over. And I'm telling you, Silent, taking breaks from Twitter has saved my health. I don't say that lightly, but my blood pressure goes down. I have less headaches. I feel a lot better when I take a day or two away because people are they're constantly at each other's throats. And with the stuff going on in New York with the governor, and as somebody who survived sexual assault, I tend to avoid when that's the hot topic of Twitter anyway, because I feel like people love playing sides when it comes to shit like that, and I'm not okay. I don't care if I like a person. If there are enough credible allegations against them for something that serious, it's time to set that like aside. I can't play around with this because I know what it feels like to be violated and have people not believe you. People that should have believed you. And to have somebody in power do that to you and then have your whole life put before the media sounds like a fucking nightmare. What I went through was traumatic enough. I can't imagine amplifying it with it being somebody famous or wealthy or powerful. Yet people are so quick to dismiss this because the person being accused has a D by their name. And let me tell you something. One of the reasons why I stayed a Democrat is because we didn't become a cult that just accepts our politicians, flaws and all, just to have power. because that's not how it works. So if we're going to become like the Republicans, who just allow rapists and horrible people to assume power just so we can say our party's in the lead, I don't want no parts of this. We already see what that kind of entitlement leads to. It leads to a young man and his mother traveling across state lines. I'm not letting this go because they called that 17-year-old a child. But he made the very adult decision to take an assault rifle and murder protesters. I'm tired of seeing this. He is out on bail right now. A young man who was in a car with his fiance and their young child, who was a registered gun owner, murdered by the police after telling them, I'm a registered gun owner, it's in the glove compartment. There is two Americas, and I'm sick of it. Because the majority of us, whether we're women, whether we're black, whether we're POC, whether we are Muslim, Southeast Asian, we have lived with a double standard that even pits us against each other. When you see Southeast Asian and Asian Trump supporters, that is because they have fed into that toxic swill that somehow these people who are willing to hang people because of their skin color and religious beliefs will somehow spare them. Without realizing that, yeah, they might let you stick around long enough, but if the rest of us are gone, you're going to be their next target. And when you're gone, they'll divide up between them. Because that's what happens when you keep telling people that they're entitled to whatever they feel they're entitled to, and there's no consequences for their actions. It's why a 70-year-old woman who had more than what life should have handed to her can get on, say racist, anti-Asian, and black things, and then act like she's being railroaded for the words that came out of her mouth. Yes, I'm talking about Sharon Osbourne, and yes, I am sick of her wrinkly ass being all over my Twitter feed too. It is so funny that people are trying to call the consequences of their actions cancel culture. It is not cancel culture if you are on record saying harmful, hateful things about somebody being ghetto. What kills me is the person she called ghetto. Holly Robinson Peete. I remember growing up watching 21 Jump Street, one of my favorite shows when I was younger. Watched her in, I think it was Hanging with Mr. Robinson. She was in a lot of stuff. Holly Robinson Peete has never given off the vibe to me, and I even watched some of her reality show because of my mom when she lived with me, as ghetto anything. Yet, Sharon Osbourne, Little Miss Pip Pip Crumpet bitch, married to a literal, I wouldn't use Ozzy's blood to clean paint. That's how drug infected it was. And gonna look down on a black woman for being ghetto. Ain't that sway? Could you imagine if she hadn't married Ozzy and had family that already had like money from music? She probably would have been one of them Liverpool hookers. And I will take whatever flack I can. You know I support sex workers, so it's not diminishing the job. It's just she knows she wouldn't have gotten far in life if she hadn't married well and been born in the money. But gonna call somebody ghetto. She can get all the way the fuck out of here with that nonsense. It's just so vexing that these people allow themselves to be the victims after going on record saying harmful things. And it's not just wealthy idiots like Sharon Osbourne. You've got people on Twitter talking about, well, I don't see why the media doesn't highlight white allies and how they stand up for Asian Americans and POC. And it's like, so now we got to give y'all cookies for doing bare minimum humanity? Exactly. Oh my gosh, Capricorn. She would look like a freaking old Sharpay. She already kind of does with red hair. But the thing that bothered me about that guy wanting the media to report on allies is, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face, you are not allowed to call yourself an ally. I learned that speaking up for LGBT. I do not live that life. It is not my story to tell. It is only my story to listen and to amplify when I can. I do not call myself an ally to the LGBT. But if somebody from the LGBT wants to say I'm an ally to them, that is their right. I, as a black woman, if I say I consider you an ally, that is not a title or a badge that you go waving around other black people's face. That is Tin trusts me enough to where she can talk to me and views me as a human being because you view her as a human being. And I am not going to use this as a shield or a cudgel for my fuckery. And that's the problem with social media right now. People want to take titles like ally and, oh, I've got this family and I got that family. I got this and that. You don't use your family as an excuse to act like a dick and talk about you need a pat on the back for not being a card-carrying racist. Then you had another man who, after my friend Brandy, who lives in Iowa, put up the picture of the Atlanta shooter, said, men like this scare me. Brandy lives in Iowa. She is white as white can be, though she has soul. I'm not going to say she doesn't. Love her. She's like a sister to me. We both have the favorite song, No Diggity. But she is not a black woman, and she's acknowledged that. But she's a white woman. White women have faced violence from white men since the fucking inception. So if anybody has a right to say men like this scare her, it's her. And this guy who declared himself an ally jumped into her mentions talking about you're a racist against white men, which impossible, but okay. Then he says, you have to apologize to me for making a post about a shooter who took 8 lives who had nothing to do with this man. So when I pointed it out, because like I said, even though I do my best now on Twitter to not insert myself into every tweet that I see for my own health and sanity, that I've read her tweet. Where in that tweet does she name you directly, dude? Why are you in your fields, and why should she give you an apology for you reading something that wasn't there? Then all of a sudden, oh no, I'm your ally. I didn't mean that, and now everybody's blocked me, and I want to have a conversation, a heavy conversation about race with African Americans. And what? What? Who are you, and who designed your brain where you think you have the right to call upon African Americans to have a serious conversation? I would have a serious conversation about toast with you. But this is the amount of insane privilege that some of these dudes have online. And I can only imagine them offline. When I lived in North Carolina, I try to be friendly with everybody. And when you live in the South, even if you're old school New Yorker like I was, you eventually acclimate to waving to people, being nice and friendly because you don't want to be that dick. So I got to know one of the crossing guards at my son's school. Seemed like a nice guy. We used to talk every morning about different things, cars, history. Then around 2016, right before I started planning my move to Michigan, he became a Trumper. And it went from us talking every day to him using terms like the blacks and talking about, well, I'm not racist. My mother was an old school Democrat back in the 50s and the 60s, which, if you know history, your brain just did the record skip like mine did, understanding the Southern strategy of the Republicans and the Democrats back then. Because that's another reason why a lot of black people back in the day went from Republican to Democrat. Because the Southern Democrats were a bunch of bitches. Racist ass, bigoted ass bitches. And yes, there is a difference between bigotry and systemic racism. And I watched people argue over that too this weekend. And that's why I was like, you know what? Well, this week, I'm not going to interject in all of this. Because everybody has definitions for what they think hatred is. But unless you've lived that life, you don't get to tell the people who've lived that life how to think, how to feel on the shit that's affecting them. Systemic racism is a system set to dehumanize a specific group of people. It mostly targets black people. It keeps us out of jobs. It's the reason why my name on an application will more than likely be rejected by somebody who thinks it's too ethnic. It's why it's harder to get into schools. It's hard to move into decent neighborhoods. It is why, even when we get neighborhoods, they're called hoods and ghetto, and then somebody decides to build a Starbucks there, and a bunch of college kids move in, and we get pushed out of that. It is why, even when we get together and make towns of settlements like Rosewood and Tulsa and that little town in Pennsylvania, they bomb us. They burn our towns down and they murder our bodies with impunity. Because you see, no matter what, as long as somebody can dehumanize another human being to feel good about themselves, as long as they have that preacher telling them it's okay, the media telling them it's okay, their peers downplaying it like it's not a big deal because they don't feel the brunt of it, this is going to continue. And I know that hearing my words, you're thinking, well, what can I do, Tim? Who can I reach? Should I yell at my family? Should I get into an argument? And no. If I've learned anything, especially in these last few years, is that you cannot argue with people stuck in this mindset. It's dangerous for many. It fractures families. And it really isn't worth the stress. The only way you can make things better is to constantly work on yourself. I tell people all the time, the 10 that was 20 years in the past was not like this. I laughed at stupid jokes that harmed transgender and LGBT. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not going to shy away from that because I learned what's not acceptable. I never batted an eyelash against anti-Native and anti-Asian hate, even though I have Native blood and Asian blood in my family. I honestly played the good Negro, even when I knew I was uncomfortable because a lot of times I was the only black person in the room. But I went into survival mode and I put up with the jokes and I put up with the indignities because I didn't want to lose a job. I didn't want to lose a school opportunity. And it ate away at my soul. And I think a lot of it attributed to the bipolar depression that I go through and a lot of my schizophrenia. Because you internalize all that trauma and you keep telling yourself that it's okay, you'll be all right. It's only words, they don't matter. But when you've been hearing it all your life that you're different for something that you have no control over, and that society is just determined to make you feel less than, it gets you. And exactly, you can't change people, bees. And I just wish people would understand that. Exactly, Capricorn. Actually, yeah. And the thing is, I want people to understand that the only way we can fight hate is through knowledge. Constantly using those devices, not just to argue on Twitter or watch our favorite videos, but to read about history, especially modern history. That attack on Pennsylvania was in the 80s. I believe 84. That wasn't that long ago. A whole black neighborhood, bombs dropped on. Whenever we try to congregate and think for ourselves and have better, this is what we're met with. Our kids are slandered as thugs when they're murdered unjustly. Yet certain demographics can buy their kids weapons of fucking death because a gun, as I was taught by my grandfather, is used for one purpose. It's not used to maim, it's not used cutesy. You are using this weapon to take a life. So miss me with that whole, oh, Kyle Rittenhouse's mom didn't know what she was doing. She knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. They were out to take a life. And they were radicalized by this bubble society places around white skin, elevating them to this undeserved pedestal when a lot of them ain't shit. And the ones who are, Some of them are so ingrained into protecting the status quo that they won't even think to challenge this. And it makes y'all look bad too. And then you have those who are really fighting and struggling and getting sick to their stomach because they don't want to be monolith with the psychopaths out there taking lives and the other ones enabling this. But I can't help y'all. And I try to explain that to people all the time. I would love to be able to say words of comfort to you to make you feel whole in the face of all of this trouble. But you got to work on yourself. I am too busy trying to survive, keep my family alive and safe. I cannot be your Negro whisperer. I cannot be your spiritual guide all the time. I will give words of encouragement when I can. But these last few days, I have felt so drained mentally and spiritually by the prevalence of hate, the acceptance of it, the normalization of people mass shooting and taking this many lives because they're angry. And I just keep asking, what the hell are they so angry about? What do you have going on in your life that is so bad that you have to take innocent lives away? And why is it always the same demographic? They're not the only group of men to get angry. Angry men are in every ethnic group. Some of them do abuse their families horribly. Some of them go into violent sports. Some of them are just big ass bullies. But only one demographic seems really focused on taking whatever rage they're feeling, whether it's because they're not currently wealthy enough or they're not being heard, even though the media constantly does think pieces on them, even though they were allowed to get an orange spray tan jackass in charge of us for 4 years. They're never heard. They are told from the get-go that they're special little snowflakes, yet they call us that. Why are they so angry, and why do they get to channel that anger and the violence against everybody else? Why do they get to listen to talk show hosts that pretend like they're angry white guys like Alex Jones, who now comes out talking about, I'm just a performance artist, now that he's getting sued for his bullshit? This man called the school shooting that he probably inspired a hoax. And that's another thing. The only thing that I can say positive about this pandemic, besides allowing me to embrace the hermit life that my psychiatrist was trying to stop me from embracing, is the fact that we're not putting our kids into schools having to do active shooter drills right now. Because that wasn't fun when I lived in Georgia, and I would get a ping from the school that my kid's school is under a drill for an active shooter. Why is this our reality? It shouldn't be like this. And I'm tired of it. Oh, I'm telling you, Silent, it has been a blessing in disguise for me to not have to justify not having to deal with people on a regular basis. And it's not that I hate people. Social media has been a lifeline to me because I like talking to people. I like sharing ideas. I like seeing artwork and people's dogs and everything else. Yeah, see, he's a lovable grump. The thing is, I don't like being outside anymore. It was before even Trump, because you live in a town where you're the darkest person in your block, and you feel like people are looking at you like you don't belong. Or you go out to the store and you dread that woman with the weird haircut and the nasty look on her face looking at you like she wants to say something, like she's above you. The indignities of having a store owner treat you like you're going to steal. The trouble that people give you just for existing in your own space. This trauma weighs on your soul. So, as much as I didn't want 539 and rising people to lose their lives for this, I like being indoors. And I like not having to justify to people why I don't want to be outside right now. Because so many people don't understand the fear I have of just being around people that don't understand me, that want to assume and act like this, especially the mask holes. Those people are the worst. Because we're asking you to do is to be safe and to keep other people safe, and they want to go on about their rights. Your rights to what? Be a plague spreader? And now we've got to worry about them not getting vaccine because of ridiculousness. It is a mess. And the only way we can tackle this mess is to constantly be on ourselves to not fall for the okie doke, verify information that we get online, and to constantly hear the voices without overstepping, without speaking up for it, and without centering ourselves into conversations where we don't belong. There's no other way to put it. When my friend talks about her experience as a lesbian woman, I listen. Very rarely do I interject because I know when she's sharing her truth, even if it's painful and brutal, she's doing it to show people what it's like to live that life. I will never understand what she's gone through, but I have enough empathy to know I don't want her or anybody else to go through that ever again. And I don't have to jump into what she's writing and say, well, I've gone through it too, or make it about me. I'll retweet her every once in a while because I want her voice amplified. Just like my trans friend. I want them to understand that I see them. I hear them. I'm not going to speak over them. This is not my story to tell, but I will be damned if I help silence their voices. Because I know what that feels like. Every time I talk about racism, I have at least 5 or 6 types coming up about not all or not me. And it's like, if it ain't you, why are you here? Why are you bothering me? Why do you have so much energy to defend people who don't deserve that defense? I have fallen in love with my best friend. He happens to be a white man. He has never once, in any of the conversations I've had about how racism affects me in this country, thought I was targeting him directly. Now, we joke around. We've been friends for almost 20 years. There are things he and I can say to each other, having fun. Shut up. Except that I don't get with other people. But he likes pushing that envelope though. But he understands that when I am venting about the people like the Georgia shooter, when I am venting about Derek Chauvin, who is trying to get his trial thrown out, when he's on tape murdering a man, that I am not lumping him in. I am not putting him into a monolith. He understands that no matter what, he can feel pain and empathy for everything I'm going through, but he's never going to understand it because he's never gone through that. And all he can do is support and make sure that he doesn't cause harm to people like me and others. And it really is that simple. It's not about changing the world. It's not about telling your family that you got to do this, you got to do that. If anything, we've learned that when your family is ingrained in a way or mindset, like with my mom and her issues, the worst thing you can do is try to tell them they're wrong. They dig in deeper. So the best thing we can do to take on white rage is to make sure that we don't emulate it. Because it doesn't just come out of white people. It is so ingrained in our country that even people of color, black and non-black, emulate this. We have normalized it to the point where people feel that it's justified to hate on people that look like them even. It's twisted. And I want to see us get to a better place. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up, y'all. I want to thank you all again for tuning in. And like I said in the beginning of the cast, I have good news. Because of the stimulus money, thank you, Biden, for being confident, I decided to do some upgrades to my equipment. I've had this Dell for almost 8 years. I love it. I love the studio. I love the onboard mic and everything. But it's starting to fall apart. The wheels are coming off. And as I told people on Twitter, and I did not do this for a donation, though, thank you everybody who has sent stuff. All I wanted you to know is that I was trying to assuage my guilt as a mom, buying myself a new computer because I'm not used to buying stuff for myself. But as somebody who does content like this, who's working on animation, who writes, I needed a new computer, so I finally dug in my heels and got a new system built. It should be here in a few days. Hopefully, by the next Bonnet Chronicles, you're going to see a whole new setting. I have a computer chair that's also coming and a microphone. I just want to upgrade the show just a little bit. It's still going to be one-on-one with me and you guys in the chat. I'm still going to post it to YouTube. I just feel like as I upgrade the quality of my system, I can upgrade the quality of the show a bit more, play around with the controls and maybe add some stuff. Yes, we are on Discord. We're called Axiom's Den. You can follow us on it. We are more gaming focused on that, but I'm sure Axiom won't mind me talking about Bonnet Chronicle stuff.
There's a general chat in there, and if you want, we can actually make a subcategory room for Bonnet Chronicles.
Yeah.
Stick it right in there.
And I've invited friends to there, you know. I don't chat much right now because, like I said, the wheels have been falling off my PC for almost a year. So I barely use this thing right now. And when I'm on my phone, I'm on Twitter. But I will be on Discord more. I'll be able to stream a bit more because I do like doing gaming content too. So I'm really excited about this. I took a break last Saturday from the Witches Chronicle. I'm still gathering information. Tomorrow we're going out. So I'm probably going to record the newer episode and have it uploaded sometime during the week. But I will be back here next Friday. And even if I don't have the new computer yet, the microphone and chair are on its way here. Chair will be here tomorrow. I am excited about this. So I want to thank each one of you in the chat. I want to thank everybody who consistently watches this cast, either on here or on YouTube, everybody who follows me on Twitter and interacts, because I don't view you guys as numbers. We are friends. Some of you are like family to me. I love talking to you all, and I will be here next week. Thank you so much for being on there. And the honesty, you're so silly. But I'm going to wrap it up, y'all. You have a good night, and I will be uploading this to YouTube. For anybody who came late to the chat, you will see us soon.